I remember the first day I walked into the staff room at Eastwood High in Austin, Texas. It was just a few weeks after I graduated from college, and I was both nervous and excited to start my teaching career. It was 1985, and Robert, who was already a well-respected teacher there, was assigned as my mentor. He was 4 years older than me, with a calm demeanor and an air of authority that immediately drew me to him. From the moment we met, there was an undeniable spark between us. Robert was charming and supportive, and as he guided me through my early days at the school, I found myself looking forward to our interactions. It didn't take long for our professional relationship to turn personal. I was drawn to him in a way I hadn't expected, and it wasn't long before we started dating. The early days were magical. Robert's maturity and life experience were a perfect complement to my youthful enthusiasm. I was thrilled to be with someone who seemed to understand me so well. But our happiness was soon tested when I discovered I was pregnant. It was a surprise that came at a time when we were both still figuring things out. But rather than being a setback, it strengthened our bond. We married quickly, and I left my job to focus on becoming a full-time mother. Our lives changed dramatically. Robert continued teaching, and I devoted myself to raising our 3 children: our eldest daughter, Emma, who is now 38, our middle daughter, Lily, who is 35, and our youngest, Ben, who is 32. Those early years were busy and filled with challenges, but also with joy. I poured all my energy into nurturing our children, helping them with their schoolwork, and managing the household. It was a labor of love, but it was also exhausting. Robert was dedicated to his work, often bringing home stories from school and sharing his experiences. He was a loving father, though his commitment to his job meant he was frequently away from home. Despite the long hours he put in, I never minded. I was content with my role and the life we were building together. The children grew up, and I continued to manage our home, making sure everything ran smoothly. I was proud of the way they turned out. Emma, with her passion for art; Lily, who excelled in business; and Ben, who found his calling in engineering. As the years went by, I began to imagine a future where Robert and I could finally enjoy some leisure time together. Our children were growing up and becoming independent, which meant we could start thinking about ourselves. We talked about traveling, taking up new hobbies, and enjoying our second life together. I envisioned us exploring new places and spending quality time as a couple. But as Robert neared retirement, things began to change. It started with small complaints about the meals I prepared and the state of the house. At first, I thought it was just a phase or perhaps stress from his job. But as time went on, his criticisms became more frequent and intense. He began to nitpick everything I did, from how I cleaned the house to the way I managed our finances. It was confusing and hurtful. I had always put so much effort into making our home comfortable and our lives enjoyable, so his constant complaints seemed unwarranted. One evening, after a particularly harsh comment about the dinner I had made, I couldn't hold back my frustration. "Robert, why are you suddenly so critical of everything I do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked up from his plate, his expression inscrutable. "It's just that I've been thinking about how things will be after I retire. I don't want to be stuck with the same old routine." I was taken aback. "But we've talked about this. We're going to enjoy our time together. Why are you bringing this up now?" Robert sighed, looking tired. "I don't know, Linda. It just feels like things need to change." I tried to understand, but his dissatisfaction seemed to deepen. I sought advice from our children, hoping they could offer some insight. Emma and Lily were supportive, though they were puzzled by their father's behavior. Ben, who was always more perceptive, mentioned something that made me uneasy. He joked, "Maybe Dad's having an affair or something. I mean, he's been acting really strange." At first, I dismissed it as a careless comment. But as Robert's behavior became increasingly erratic, I couldn't ignore the possibility. The thought of him being unfaithful was unbearable, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was wrong. Determined to find out the truth, I made a decision that felt both drastic and necessary. I hired a private investigator to look into Robert's activities. It was an action I never thought I'd have to take, but the growing distance and his uncharacteristic behavior left me with no choice. Little did I know, This decision would set off a chain of events that would change my life forever. As the days passed and I waited for the investigator's report, I could feel the weight of the uncertainty pressing down on me. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy at home, but the strain was evident. Robert's discontent seemed to grow with each passing day, and I was left wondering how our relationship had come to this. I needed answers, and I was about to get them. The day the private investigator's report arrived, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. I could barely bring myself to open the envelope, but the need for answers drove me. Sitting alone in my study, I unfolded the report and began reading. Each line confirmed my worst fears. Robert was indeed having an affair with a younger woman named Jessica. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. I had hoped for some mistake or misunderstanding, but the evidence was clear. Robert had been meeting Jessica frequently, and the investigator had captured photos of them together. The betrayal was not just emotional but also deeply personal, shattering the image of our life together that I had clung to for so long. I kept the report hidden and tried to maintain a facade of normalcy at home. Robert's retirement was approaching, and I had to prepare myself for the inevitable confrontation. I found an apartment in a quiet part of town, far enough from the life we had built together, but close enough to be accessible. I needed a place to go if Robert decided to force me out, and having a backup plan gave me a small sense of control amid the chaos. As Robert's retirement date drew nearer, his behavior became increasingly erratic. He complained more about everything, from the cleanliness of the house to the way I managed our finances. I was used to his criticism, but now it felt like a prelude to something more significant. Our conversations became terse, and the warmth that once defined our relationship was replaced by a cold formality. One evening, after a particularly harsh exchange over dinner, Robert made a statement that was both shocking and revealing. "Linda, I've been thinking," he said, his tone clipped. "Once I retire, I don't see the point in keeping the charade. I want a divorce." I was stunned.
What?
"After all these years, you want to just walk away?" Robert leaned back in his chair, looking resolute. "Yes, I do. I'm planning on keeping all my retirement money, which I estimate to be over $320,000. You'll be left with nothing, and I won't have to deal with your constant complaints anymore." His words were like a knife to my heart. I was hurt and angry, but I kept my composure. "Is this how you're going to end things? Just like that?" Robert's expression was a mix of irritation and satisfaction. "It's what I've decided. I've been putting up with too much, and I'm ready to move on." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I took a deep breath and composed myself. I had to think clearly and act wisely. Robert's confidence in his plan only fueled my resolve. I knew I had to be prepared for what was to come. Over the next few weeks, I made sure to finalize the details of my new apartment and secure my financial situation. My work as a teacher had provided me with a decent income, and my careful savings meant I wasn't entirely dependent on Robert. I also made sure to document everything about our financial situation, including the retirement account that Robert was so eager to keep. Robert's behavior grew more erratic and impatient as his retirement date approached. He seemed to be in a constant state of agitation, and his criticism of me became even more pointed. I could sense that he was preparing for a major change, and I had to match his determination with my own readiness. On the day of Robert's retirement party at the school, I felt a sense of foreboding. It was meant to be a celebration, but for me, it was a reminder of the impending confrontation. As Robert received his colleagues' congratulations and accolades, I watched from the sidelines, my mind racing with thoughts of how I would handle the situation once we were alone. When we finally returned home, Robert wasted no time. "It's time to discuss the details of our separation," he said bluntly. "I'll keep the retirement funds, and you'll have to manage on your own." I looked him straight in the eye. "You don't get to decide everything on your own. I've been preparing for this, and I'm not going to walk away empty-handed." Robert's face showed a flicker of surprise, but he quickly masked it with a dismissive smile. "What are you talking about?" "I know about Jessica," I said, taking a deep breath. "And I have evidence of your affair. If this is how you want to end things, then fine. But I'm not going to be left with nothing." I'll be seeking alimony and my fair share of the retirement funds. Robert's expression shifted from surprise to anger. You think you can just take me for everything I have? I think it's only fair, I said, standing my ground. I've given up so much for this marriage. I'm not going to let you walk away without facing the consequences. The tension in the room was palpable. Robert seemed to be caught off guard by my readiness and resolve. It was clear that he hadn't anticipated me being so prepared. As the confrontation continued, I could feel the weight of the situation lifting slightly from my shoulders. I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life, and the path forward was starting to become clearer. The days after Robert's retirement party were a whirlwind of activity. I spent my time organizing my new apartment, making it feel like home, and preparing for the legal battle ahead. The reality of our situation began to sink in, and the uncertainty of the future was daunting, but I felt a growing sense of empowerment. I wasn't going to let Robert's betrayal define me. Robert's arrogance persisted, and he seemed to believe that his plan was foolproof. He made no effort to hide his disdain for me. The few times we spoke, he was dismissive and condescending. I hope you're ready for the reality of living on your own, he'd say with a smirk. You'll have to manage without my support. It was a challenge, but I was ready. I spent time with my lawyer, gathering evidence and preparing my case. I wanted to ensure that everything was in order so that Robert couldn't exploit any loopholes. My lawyer was confident that I had a strong case, and this bolstered my resolve. One afternoon, as I was sorting through documents in my new apartment, I received a call from my lawyer. Linda, I have some important news, he said. We've scheduled a meeting with Robert to discuss the terms of the divorce and the division of assets. My heart raced. This was the moment I had been preparing for. When is it? Next Monday, he replied. Be ready. We'll go over everything beforehand. The meeting day arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves and determination. Robert and I sat across from each other at the lawyer's office, and the tension was almost unbearable. My lawyer began by outlining the terms of the divorce and the division of assets. He presented the evidence of Robert's affair and made it clear that I would be seeking a fair share of the retirement funds and alimony. Robert's initial reaction was one of surprise and irritation. This is ridiculous, he snapped. I've already told you my terms. Why are we wasting time with all this? I took a deep breath and addressed Robert directly. I've worked hard for many years, and I deserve a fair share of what we've built together. I'm not just going to walk away without fighting for my rights. The meeting was intense, with Robert growing increasingly agitated as the discussions went on. He tried to undermine my claims, but my lawyer was prepared with all the necessary documentation. The conversation shifted to the financial aspects, and Robert's demeanor changed from defiant to defensive. When the topic of his retirement funds came up, Robert's frustration was palpable. You think you're entitled to everything? He barked. Those funds are mine. I looked him squarely in the eyes. It's not about entitlement. It's about fairness. I contributed to this marriage and the life we built together. I'm entitled to my share. The discussion continued for several hours, with neither side backing down. Eventually, we reached a preliminary agreement on the division of assets and alimony. Robert agreed to a settlement that included a portion of the retirement funds and regular alimony payments. While it wasn't everything I had hoped for, it was a significant step towards achieving some measure of justice. As I left the office, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The battle wasn't over, but I had taken a crucial step in reclaiming control over my life. The agreement was a testament to my resolve and the hard work I had put into preparing for this moment. In the weeks that followed, I focused on adjusting to my new life. I continued teaching, which provided a sense of normalcy and purpose. I also spent time with my children and grandchildren, cherishing the moments we had together. My newfound independence was liberating, and I began to embrace the opportunities that lay ahead. Robert, on the other hand, faced a more difficult path. His new relationship with Jessica was strained, and the financial strain of the alimony payments took a toll. His children, disillusioned by his actions, chose to distance themselves from him. The isolation he experienced was a stark contrast to the life he had envisioned. As I moved forward, I took solace in knowing that I had faced the challenges head-on and emerged stronger. The journey wasn't easy, but it was mine to navigate, and I was determined to make the most of it. As the months passed, I found myself settling into a new rhythm of life. My apartment, once a place of uncertainty, had become a haven of peace and independence. I embraced each day with a sense of purpose and gratitude, appreciating the newfound freedom that had come from overcoming such a tumultuous period. The transition wasn't without its challenges. There were moments of loneliness and times when I missed the comfort of having a partner by my side. Yet, these feelings were overshadowed by the joy of reclaiming my life and the support of my children. Their visits became a source of comfort and strength, reminding me of the love and connection that were still very much present in my life. My work as a teacher continued to be a rewarding and stabilizing force. I found solace in my students and the classroom environment, where I could focus on something I loved and felt passionate about. Teaching allowed me to channel my energy into something positive and fulfilling, reinforcing my sense of self-worth and purpose. Meanwhile, Robert's situation continued to unravel. His relationship with Jessica, the younger woman he had cheated on me with, deteriorated rapidly. The financial strain from the alimony payments was more than he had anticipated, and Jessica left him once it became clear that he couldn't provide the lifestyle she had hoped for. To make matters worse, Robert's children chose to maintain their distance from him, disillusioned by his actions and the pain he had caused. I remember the day I heard about Robert's predicament. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was enjoying a quiet cup of tea when my eldest daughter called. "Mom, have you heard about Dad?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. I braced myself for the news. "What's happened?" I asked. "It's not good," she said. "He's struggling financially, and Jessica has left him. The kids are not interested in maintaining a relationship with him, and he's all alone." The news didn't come as a shock. Over the months, I had watched Robert's life slowly crumble under the weight of his own decisions. While I felt a pang of sympathy, I also felt a sense of justice. He had betrayed not only me but also his own family. His downfall was a harsh reminder of the consequences of his actions. As for me, my focus remained on building a fulfilling and joyful life. I took up new hobbies, such as painting and gardening, which brought me immense satisfaction. I also continued to nurture my relationships with my children and grandchildren, enjoying the special moments we shared. The holidays were particularly meaningful, filled with laughter and love, which reinforced the importance of family and connection in my life. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on how far I had come. I thought about the years of sacrifice and dedication, the pain of betrayal, and the journey to reclaim my independence. It was a journey that had transformed me, making me stronger and more self-assured than I had ever been before. I realized that the challenges I faced had ultimately led to a greater understanding of myself and what I wanted out of life. I had learned to appreciate the value of self-reliance and the power of resilience. The experience had taught me that while life could be unpredictable and difficult, it was also filled with opportunities for growth and renewal. As I closed that chapter of my life, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had navigated the complexities of betrayal and divorce, and I had emerged with a renewed sense of purpose and joy. My life was no longer defined by the past, but by the possibilities of the future. The story of my journey was one of self-discovery and empowerment. It was about facing adversity with courage and embracing the freedom to live on my own terms. I had found strength in the midst of heartache, and I was ready to continue writing my own story, one filled with hope and new beginnings. And so, as the sun set over Austin, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life I had built and the lessons I had learned. The future was mine to shape, and I was determined to make it as bright and fulfilling as possible.